wanted to understand your career journey.
For the first 2 years, I was doing equity research, recommending stocks to investors. I used to do research on the likes of Hindustan Lever.
And ये venture capital से कैसे different होता है महेश, private equity?
Venture capital is essentially most of the times in early stage companies. Private equity is in a little bit more mature companies.
Your personal investment journey when you started it और आप अभी कैसे manage करते हो?
I have stayed away from directly investing in stocks. I'm a big believer in regularly investing, not lump sums, right? So I regularly make SIP investments.
आज की डेट में किसी को जॉब चाहिए तो कौन सी स्किल्स हैं जिस पे ओवर इंडेक्स करना चाहिए?
It's about rigorousness of research. If something is available to everybody, let's say AI becomes solutions, you should be using those.
So you look at emerging markets, and if we talk about India, what are certain trends about India?
Right now, the entire macroeconomic situation is so.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Growthcast podcast, and today I have with me Mahesh Joshi, who is author and writer of HIT Investing. We are going to sit with him, understand his fundamentals, principles, and also understand in detail about impact investing. Thank you so much, Mahesh, for taking our time. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Shashank, for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Great. So Mahesh, before I start talking about impact investing, wanted to understand your career journey and how everything started for you.
Yeah, so I finished my MBA and then started my career with equity research. So the first 2 years I was doing equity research, recommending stocks to investors, mainly in the consumer sector. So the likes of, I used to do research on the likes of Hindustan Lever, Godrej and all these stocks, and make recommendations to investors. Then I got into private equity in 2007, and since then I've been in private equity for the last 18 years or so. I worked with some of the large firms, Darby, IDFC Private Equity, and then I joined Leapfrog in Singapore. And that is when my shift into impact investing happened. Right. So it is, in a way, an extension of what I was doing, but with a different lens or a specific lens to add value from a social perspective as well.
Right.
Initially, my focus was on healthcare, and with the objective that how can I improve the affordability as well as accessibility of healthcare for low and middle income people. And after that, I joined Blue Orchard, where I specifically focus on climate resilience. So the objective is how I can build climate resilience through our investments, essentially by driving the penetration of insurance across emerging markets.
Right.
So that's a little complicated. Not a lot of people understand how to connect climate resilience and insurance, but I'll not go into specifics.
Got it. You talked about private equity, Mahesh, और थोड़ा सा ये लोगों को समझ में आता नहीं कि exactly private equity होता क्या है. So if you can simplify it for the audience, what is private equity and what
so
it basically
private equity is very similar to what happens in the markets, right? You have listed companies out there where you can buy stocks of those listed companies.
Right.
But in private equity, the same thing is happening for companies that are not listed on the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, one of the first investments that I had made was in Cafe Coffee Day when it was even, before listing. But then you help the company grow. One of the things of private equity is when you give money to the company, most of the times it's a primary investment. So the money is going into the company like an IPO. So when a company raises money in IPO, the money goes into the company. But after that, whatever happens is essentially trading of the stock from one person to the other, which is secondary sale. So private equity in that sense helps those companies to grow with the capital they're provided. And that is the key difference, I would say. But essentially it's the same thing, but investing in private companies. Another key difference is when you look at a public company, there's a lot more corporate governance around it. There's a lot more validation of the numbers that they've already put out for investors. In private equity, you have to do a lot more diligence. So you have to actually, work with Big Fours to do an audit, proper audit, to see that the numbers are right. You have to work with lawyers to make sure everything is in place. So there's a lot more work required on diligence in private markets.
Got it. And ये venture capital से कैसे different होता है महेश, private equity?
Venture capital or private equity almost similar है, लेकिन there is one key difference. Venture capital is essentially most of the times in early stage companies or startups. Private equity is in a little bit more mature companies, right? And these days the lines are blurring because as technology is becoming more and more important, Private equity also does not want to miss on the bus. So you'll see that a lot more private equity companies are also investing in technology, maybe at a later stage
Right.
when they have grown to a certain stage. But the key difference in my mind is in private equity, you are investing in established businesses. You can value those businesses very similar to the way the businesses are being valued in stock market. In venture capital, you are investing behind the founder. You are investing behind the founder's idea. So you have to be a little more, I would say, the level of risk that is taken in venture capital is much higher.
Right.
So a venture capital is okay with, let's say, 40, 50, even 60, 70% of their investments going bad. In private equity, you have to make sure that every investment of yours goes good, right? So the lens is slightly different.
राइट इसे थोड़ा सा मूव अहेड करते हैं महेश द बुक इज ऑन इम्पैक्ट इन्वेस्टिंग व्हाट इज इम्पैक्ट इन्वेस्टिंग एंड इफ यू कैन सिंप्लीफाई अगेन फॉर द ऑडियंस की होता क्या है ये
See, impact investing as a concept बहुत पुराना है. It has been there for a long period of time that when you make any investment or you build any business, you try to do also social good with that, right? I mean, businesses are supposed to have some impact or create positive impact on the society. But the word itself, impact itself, is very new. It was coined in 2007, so it's only like 18 years old. And for a long period of time, it was not defined at all. So IFC very recently in a report, when I say recently around 2018, 2019, in a report defined exactly what impact means. So they have identified 3 things that you need for impact. First of all, you need to have an intent, right? And that intent could be whatever. It could be improving the quality of life of low and middle income people. It could be driving financial inclusion. It could be helping farmers. It could be climate. You identify what that intent is. It could be whatever that intent. Then you invest in companies which help you drive that intent forward.
Got it.
Right? But then the IFC also says that just investing does not is not enough. You also have to contribute to that company. So a lot of the times in secondary markets or listed markets, वो contribution थोड़ा सा questionable हो जाता है because you buy a share and then that's it, right? लेकिन private markets में you buy equity, then you're on the board of the company, you're guiding them, you're also working with them, you get your own expertise, so you can contribute a lot more. And then IFC rounds it off by saying that look, आपने आपका intent था अच्छा है, but you also have to measure कि कैसे that intent is being achieved.
Right.
Are you actually on the right path? So alongside your financial performance, you should also measure whether that is also creating any social impact that you wanted to create in the first place. So that's the key difference. It's very similar. You're trying to achieve similar objectives. And there are 2 or 3 nuances also about impact investing because there's a lot of confusion. Impact investing and ESG are a lot of times confused, right? ESG is a word which has got negative connotation right now thanks to whatever is happening in the US. But essentially, it's a very simple concept. You have to run your business in a way that you're not doing anything bad from an environment perspective. You're not doing bad anything from a social perspective, and you're having good governance. Right? It's very simple. Essentially, it's saying do nothing bad. Right? And it is very easy. Impact investing goes a little further ahead. It says do something good. कि it's not just about not doing anything bad. वो तो minimum है any business के लिए. लेकिन आपको कुछ अच्छा भी करना है, and you have to then measure आपने क्या किया वहाँ पे.
Got it. And मैच इसमें बिजनेस की जो साइजेस होती हैं does it depend कि कितना इम्पैक्ट इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं on the maturity level of the business as well कि this is something that is expected from every startup which is coming up that they should be doing this.
Yeah, so a good question. And this is a question that a lot of startups also ask us. कि यार हमारे यहाँ पर already इतना burden है, why do you want to put additional burden of this compliance on ESG norms?
Right.
And it is a very valid question because there are so many things that are running in a founder's mind. This is probably the last of things. And most of the times, those startups, a lot of the startups are in the technology space. Their impact from an ESG perspective is actually very minimal. From an environment perspective, it's very, very minimal. And it's essentially the social norms or the governance norms. And our response in that case is, it looks very burdensome, but essentially if you have the right guide, it is about initially setting up the policies, getting the right documentation in place, and it helps the business in the long run. So when somebody approaches you for the next round in investing and you show that this is how you're running the business, your impression of that increases significantly. So it is a little bit of effort, लेकिन उसका value है. If you do that properly, उसका काफी value है. And that is where the difference is from an ESG perspective. Impact, I would say that it is, as I said, it is about doing good. The startup should already have been doing for the investor to kind of make that investment.
Right.
So if there is a misalignment there, saying that, look, I don't want to do this, or, this is not what I wanted to do, then essentially the investor's thought process in the first place was wrong.
Right.
Right? He should not have invested in that company because that objective is not going to be achieved.
Right.
But there's no point on force fitting any kind of impact objectives. It should align very well with what the company is already doing.
Got it. Got it. And Mahesh, you have covered different companies in the book as well, where you have talked about their impact investing. So would you like to walk us through one of those stories? That be really helpful.
Yeah. So the way the book is structured, I talk about 8 investors, and these 8 investors are from different parts of the world. So the objective was, I didn't want to show that there is one place where this impact investing is possible. It's emerging markets, developed markets, or whatever, or only one sector it is possible. Like, there's a lot of the impact investing. When people say impact investing, people think microfinance, right? I wanted to say that there's a broader horizon. So we have picked investors who are doing different kind of work across the globe and at different sizes. Some are early stage venture capital, some are late stage investors. Some are investing in very different way as well. It's energy transition, investing in projects. So that was the objective. And then for each investor, we picked companies that are to give examples of exactly what is happening.
Right.
Right. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult for people to understand what exactly we mean. So in this, we covered many companies. A lot of good work around impact investing has happened in India. India is like a very good example for what you can achieve with impact investing, right? Microfinance has been such a great story. So, but we talk about companies, similar companies. So one of the companies that we talk about, which has been a very good success story, is Ujjivan. But we then talk about IndiaMart. It's a listed company. It's a B2B. It's a company which is creating positive impact for so many small and medium enterprises. Right? They're able to run their businesses because of IndiaMart being there. We also talk about Veritas, which is a financial services company which provide loans to those micro enterprises. Then we talk about new age businesses like Mintify, right? What they're doing the supply chain finance side. So there are several examples in the book on the kind of businesses that are creating a positive impact, but at the same time generating very good returns.
Right.
So there's a company called Better Place, which is essentially helping the entire gig economy of India upgrade themselves.
Right.
Right. So these are the kind of investments that I talk about.
Got it. IndiaMart पे आप double down करना चाहेंगे क्या? What they have done and what kind of results have they achieved?
See, what IndiaMart has achieved is phenomenal, right? It is one of the companies which was least funded to get to IPO, right? So they have built a solid business model. And this business model gets built when you are actually solving for a real problem that the SMEs have.
Right.
And they were able to crack that. After the IPO also, it is one of the few success stories which has continued to do stock as I know there has been changes here and there, but in general, consistently delivering good returns for the investors as well. But essentially, that is the whole thing, right? So the whole idea was, how can you make the life of these small and medium enterprises better? And then trying to serve those enterprises in a way that, the service becomes so valuable, but you provide affordable services and still create value for yourself, for the wider economy, right? There is so much of GDP that rides, there's a decent portion of GDP that rides on the work that IndiaMart does. Right. So many MSMEs engaged, so much employment relying on them. So that is why, it's a great success story.
Got it. Mahesh, if I talk from retail investor point of view, so अगर हम किसी कंपनी को evaluate करते हैं, so can this one of the key levers जिससे idea लग सकता है कि fundamentally company कितनी strong है, the way they are contributing to the society?
It's a very very nuanced question, right? And if you, and that is another thing that I talk about in the book, right? Over time, if you imagine the world, and from a long-term perspective, 10, 20, 30 years from now, it is very likely that sustainability will become a very critical theme,
Hmm.
right? We are going through challenges. We are kind of, we hear of these things on a regular basis, but this will become a very critical thing. And the companies that align themselves to be, um, uh, to win in this sustainable world, or the sustainability themed world, will be the ones which will drive returns as well, right? Because over time, capital will migrate towards those which are better aligned with the new way of working the world. While in the short term, you can always say that it doesn't make any difference to me, but you don't know when this flip will happen. And you might be sitting on a portfolio which is no more of interest to anyone,
Right.
right? Because investor returns are driven as much by the company performance as it is by flows. And flows, a lot of the times, are determined by what is going to happen in the future, people's expectation of what is going to happen in the future. So it is important. But the challenge from a retail investor perspective is this analysis takes a little bit of effort. Right? Already, even for a retail investor, doing a regular work on stocks itself is a reasonably cumbersome thing. Thanks to AI, it is now becoming a lot more easier. I mean, I remember when I started in equity research, I used to take 2 days to build a model. Then there's so much effort that goes in, but today AI can do that job in 15 minutes.
Right.
Right? So retail investors who are really interested can do a lot of that work. And now, even on the sustainability side, there is a lot of work happening on what else. So there are tools being built, and over time they will become accessible to retail investors as well, in my view.
Got it. Talking about retail investors, it'd be good to know your personal investment journey when you started it, और आप अभी कैसे manage करते हो अपने finance में?
See, because of whatever restrictions that I have, work for a firm called Schroders. I mean, I work for Blue Orchard, which is a subsidiary of Schroders. And I've been in this investing space for a long period of time. So I've had a lot of compliances on me. And I have stayed away from directly investing in stocks.
Okay.
But the way I approach investing is I'm a big believer in regularly investing, not lump sums, right? So I regularly make SIP investments. Then within those SIP investments, I try to identify which are the big themes, right? To me, the biggest theme over the next 20, 30 years is going to be technology, right? So I then pick up themes which are technology driven, without naming. So there are technology mutual funds, etc., global technology mutual funds. I mean, because I stay in Singapore, I have the access to global markets a little more than somebody in India has. So I invest in that piece. Then I also invest in, even in India, technology is a big part of my portfolio. Then I also focus on, I think there's a lot of, winners that emerge in this small and medium enterprise portfolio. And somebody who's spending time on that so there a lot of good work happens in these companies. But it is very hard for a retail investor to scan such a big thing and then come up with winners. But the mutual fund investors who are doing that day in and day out, over time figure out, which are the good ones, which are the bad ones, and which are the ones which are going to shape up. And the alpha available there is significant. So I usually keep a reasonable portion of that for, the mid cap funds or whatever. And then I focus on there's a part of it which is, regular blue chip companies, again, through mutual funds. I keep a reasonable portion on the debt side. About 20-30% at any point of time is in the debt side. And within that, about 10% will be like money market funds, easily accessible.
Right.
But largely, that's how I build my portfolio.
So you have been doing this for a long period of time, Mahesh. अगर किसी को आज start करना है, what are some of the tips that you will give to them कि कैसे they should think about financial planning and how it is very important to be right with your financial planning?
Yeah, so it is if you think from a financial planning perspective, right? So it is not easy, right? Because there is so much noise that is created for a retail investor, and then you keep hearing people coming and telling you that I made so much in stocks, I made so much in this, that it's very, very confusing. And I myself, I was as one of the persons who was closest to what are happening in the stock market when I started my career in equity research. even I have made like massive blunders in the initially when I used to invest directly in stocks.
Right.
Right. I remember I invested my entire bonus in directly in stocks in 2007, and when the stocks tanked,
Thank.
I was sitting on 60-70% losses on that portfolio. Right. Big learning from me.
Right.
After that, I was once I entered into equity, private equity. I didn't have the from a compliance perspective to invest directly. That was in a way good thing. In hindsight, maybe I would have made those blunders again. But if it's a retail investor is thinking, then I would recommend them um, to go with experts because
Right.
there's a lot more work that they do. There's a lot of analysis that happens, and unless if somebody is really keen, right? If somebody is passionate about doing research, passionate, and that could be a passion as well,
Right.
right? So then I would recommend them to use the new age tools, including AI, to make sure that they are catching up with other people. But otherwise, rely primarily on experts. And the way I have structured my portfolio, also with the help of my wife, because my wife started her career as private banker, and she gives me some insights on
Right.
how to structure portfolio. So keeping at least 20-30% in debt, because it just helps you absorb this shock a little bit better when things are going bad, is something that I would recommend. And then the balance, as I mentioned, you figure out what your themes are
Right.
and then invest behind them.
Got it. And you had a phenomenal career in finance. So also a part of the audience is working professional. So अगर आपको building principles बताने कि if somebody has to build their career in finance is starting today in today's era, what are some of the things that they should focus on or they should learn so that they can have a long sustainable career?
Yeah. So finance is a very wide field, right? I remember when I was in B school, these days, kids are a lot more sharper. So when I interview people for analyst and associate roles, I'm blown away by the kind of intelligence they have on each segment. So when I was in B school, I could not tell what is investment banking, what is trading, what are different roles within an investment bank.
Right.
What is, but these days kids come through, they really know exactly what are different segments, what do people do within those segments, and what is it that they want to go after. So it's very little that you can add in terms of intelligence, but they have already determined that this is the sector that they want to get to. You speak with the young generation there, they'll tell you that I want to get into hedge fund or private equity, or I want to get into an investment bank, or I want to get into trading within these roles. So they have very clear objectives on what they want to get into. Now, that is very important, because then you can then work towards those objectives in a right way. Within that, then the path to some of these roles could be different, but usually what happens within most of these functions is people are looking for good business knowledge,
Right.
right? So I would generally recommend a B school degree or an MBA to be there. It just helps people validate, right? It's very hard for people to judge each other's intelligence beyond a point, so they rely on that
Right.
validation. But then build up your knowledge base further into the sector that you want to go into within finance, and understanding how to evaluate businesses is a very good starting point.
Got it.
Right? So understanding the nuances of business, how to evaluate them, financial modeling, all these things are very, very valuable. And if you want to get into trading, FX trading, and all those things, those are completely different. Then you have to think about more macro and how to structure your thoughts in macro.
लाइक मैं जो राइटली टोल्ड कि अभी एआई आ गया तो काफ़ी चीज़ें फाउंडेशनल हो जाएंगी। तो अगर आज की डेट में किसी को जॉब चाहिए तो कौन सी स्किल्स हैं जिस पे ओवर इंडेक्स करना चाहिए? बिकॉज़ एआई विल एटलीस्ट ब्रिंग एवरीवन एट अ लेवल प्लेइंग फील्ड व्हेन इट कम्स टू टेक्निकल साइड ऑफ थिंग्स।
Possible, right? A lot of the work, and this is something a group of B school students were visiting our office, and and I also remember a conversation with my son, and he asked me that, Dad, if I'm good at math, will I be good at your job?
Like,
Right? And it made me think. It made me think that exactly, is that the case? And that is partly true, because it just helps you clear one barrier, because you're able to think better or think faster. It helps you clear one barrier. But if you think through what is the critical skill that is helping you do well in the investing space, it is about making the right calls, right? And that right call, uh, is essentially it's about rigorousness of research. It's about your passion for that field. And if something is available to everybody, let's say AI becomes solutions, you should be using those.
Right.
But then you should be thinking ahead in terms of what are the new trends. So investments, financial modeling, everything is critical, but they are the beginning point. But essentially, then you have to have an independent thinking, way of coming up with the right ideas, right thoughts to back the right investments.
So how you see AI impacting your industry? Is it bringing in more efficiencies in terms of productivity or making work simpler, or maybe workforce reduction also you see sometime happening soon?
The workforce reduction is not yet there.
Hmm.
Uh,
Because it's a very tricky situation कि finance की call भी अगर AI ले रहा है तो it becomes little bit dicey also.
yeah, it is possible. It is possible. I would not say that all the jobs are at risk with AI.
Right.
It can develop to any extent. So I don't think that there is anybody who should think that they are not going to be impacted. But the way we see AI at this point of time, it's going to be a tool that will help you do your work faster, better, and especially in the financial services field, where lot of it is data and data analysis. It is very, very useful. So the firm that I am with, they have already integrated, they have already created internal tools where the data then does not go out; it remains within the system. But
Like
tools as powerful as ChatGPT to then do your own research, right? So and everybody is using them.
right.
These days, people go for a meeting and use that to kind of make it more meaningful, more valuable. So the way I see it at this point of time, people will have to start using AI in whichever field that they are in, to at least stay where they are.
Right.
Right. And people who are able to use it better will probably, go ahead. But I think people will become more productive. The pace of growth will improve, but I don't think that it will be significant employment cuts at this point of time.
Right.
But the new generation, I think, and this is what I was discussing with a friend of mine, that for our kids, the new economy might be a little more gig economy than it is currently. It is already, I mean, you see significant gig economy, but they will have to think independently on how they add value. I think careers like ours, where you spend 2 decades, 3 decades in the same field,
Right.
is probably not going to be there.
Right.
Because the pace of innovation, the pace of all these things will change completely.
Yeah, completely agree. I also see a lot of freelancing kind of jobs picking up in India as well, where you see people calling themselves freelancers and then they don't associate with any company. They are doing just these consultations. But in your field, like you told, 2 decades, 3 decades, तो ये काफी marathon type का career है. So how you continuously upskill yourself? Because I am quite sure कि आपने भी different point of times पे pivot किया होगा, upskill किया होगा to at least thrive, because it's a demanding industry that you are in.
Yeah, so I would say the learning in any field at the beginning is very, very high. So I remember equity research when I entered immediately after, where there is a huge learning curve immediately, right? After that, things become a little, similar. So the pace of learning automatically goes down because you know exactly what is happening around you. But what is interesting about private equity and venture capital to an extent is you're continuously learning. So the founders come and tell you new ideas that this is what they're working on. Then that gives you the input to then do more research, learn more about it, because you need to figure out whether this is going to be successful or not. So in that sense, there's a continuous learning, not on how how we have to do the job, but exactly what we have to do.
Right.
Right. So that learning continues all the time in private equity and venture capital, at least in our field. And that makes it very interesting as well on a regular basis. I can't comment on other fields, but there is, I think, and increasingly people are accepting that they can build very valuable careers by freelancing. And even fractional hires has become such a big thing.
Right.
There are fractional CMOs, fractional CIOs.
CIOs, CFOs, CHROs. I see this getting big in India.
Yeah. So it's amazing the way things are changing. And fractional is a nice word for gig economy, right?
Right.
Right. Essentially, what that is what it is. So it's a massive change that is happening right in front of our eyes.
Right. And Mahesh would like to understand कि you have been part of different organizations. So आपने अपने career को pace out कैसे किया? So when you decide कि this is the time I should be learning this skill, or maybe this is the time that I should be exploring new opportunities, what is your career fundamental principle that you have followed over the years?
See, in general, there is a private equity is a long-term business, right? So what happens is you raise funds. The funds are given to you for 10 years.
Right.
And within that 10 years, you deploy and then get to returns or whatever. I have generally made moves when I moved from Templeton to IDFC or IDFC to Leapfrog. Generally, when there was a strategic change in the direction or whatever, right? So without going to details, and then I thought, maybe this is not going to work. But otherwise, you kind of stay put and then see, because over time, then you get something called as carried interest,
Right.
which is dependent on how your investments perform. And it's very much like ESOP, right? Employees, you want employees to be with you. You give them ESOPs and they create value over time. So in private equity and venture capital, you get carried interest, and once your investments start performing, it makes more sense for you to continue.
Yeah, I think very similar to जब vesting होती है तो आप vesting तक रुकना चाहते हो, so you also want कि जो मैंने deploy किया था वो end तक क्या result दे।
Exactly. So that becomes very important. But in general, from a career perspective, I think I would say that as long as your goals align with that of the organization, or what you are achieving, I think it's a good thing to continue to build that.
Got it. And Mahesh, you've stayed both in India and now you're in Singapore. What are some of the styles and ways of working that you witness in both of these countries? Would you like to share with the audience?
Singapore, in a way, is very similar to an Indian, working way, right? While it is a developed country, it's still an Asian developed country. So there's people are generally hardworking,
Right.
Which is what it is in India, and so the working way is very, very similar. So I would probably differ it from a European or different the different thought process in how they kind of think about things. Singapore makes it a little more convenient to get to office and come back. So for example, I lived in Mumbai before I moved to Singapore.
Right.
You have to budget a reasonable number of time to get to office and come back. So that is slightly easier in Singapore, but otherwise not much. In my own role, because I focus largely on emerging markets, after I moved to Singapore, my travel has increased a lot more because I also look at India, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, which means there's constant travel in these, and that changes things a little bit. But it's a regional hub, so it helps Singapore in that sense.
But one thing that we see in Bollywood movies and everywhere else is कि management consultant या investment professionals होते हैं तो हमेशा business class travel करते हैं, फिर जगह पे जाते हैं, बहुत अच्छे hotels में रुकते हैं, तो ये life थोड़े time तक exciting लगती है या it becomes business as usual once you grow in your career?
Yeah, so it is definitely the perks of the job, right? I mean, I think it's not just in this field, but in most fields, right, these days, as the whole economy that we see is growing and so many, so everybody benefits. I think not particularly in finance, but almost every other industry, people, senior roles have these perks. Do you get used to them? Maybe over time. I mean, you feel that, but I think it's very, very important that people stop feeling entitled
Right.
to them, right? So I was reading this book, Bang for the Buck, and Aditya Puri in his initial days of building HDFC, he was working with Citibank earlier, and then he starts, traveling economy at the beginning when he's building HDFC. But he takes that, and because when you're building something,
Right.
Things will change initially. So if tomorrow if I have to go and set up startup and move on, then I'll have to accordingly think.
राइट हाँ आई थिंक वो ऋतिक रोशन जिंदगी ना मिलेगी दोबारा में उसने बहुत ज़्यादा फैंसी कर दिया था बट आई मूव टू द लास्ट सेट ऑफ क्वेश्चंस दैट आई हैव सो कमिंग अगेन बैक टू द बुक can you walk us through the journey of writing this book? How much time it took for you to write the book from start to end and how the idea for the book came?
Yeah, so interesting. So this is when I first started writing the book, the thought process itself, now I can connect the dots as to what led to this and why it happened. But essentially, um, an ex-colleague of mine, his name is Pritesh Modi, he was working with me at Leapfrog. After, he also left Leapfrog around the same time that I left, and he was in Germany with DEG. He wrote a book called The Era of Doing Nothing, and he self-published it himself. And I read it, and we were discussing about the book. The book itself is very interesting. It talks about his journey in which he goes from Singapore all the way to Antarctica, right? Without taking on road,
Right.
by train, by hitchhiking, or whichever way. He took one flight in between to cross the Atlantic, but otherwise it's entirely a road journey. And we were discussing about the book. One thought led to another, and then we thought it makes sense to write a book on impact investing because there's so much misinformation. And when I was outside of this field, I saw that there was so much misinformation about what impact investing is, right? And I thought it makes sense to talk about it. And then we're thinking, what should be the format? We have our jobs. We don't want it to be too cumbersome. Then we thought, and I had, when I started my journey in investing, I read a lot of books. So like Market Masters, Value Investing with the Masters by Kirk Kazanjian, Super Analyst by Andrew Leeming. And I found them to be very useful because in one book, in one shot, you have conversation with 20 investors. You learn so many things about those investors, and then you can figure out what makes sense for you, what does not make sense for you, and then build your own thesis. And I thought something like that for impact investing will be useful. Like I found it useful when I read those books. Somebody might find it useful when you write this. So we started, and then I asked for internal approval. Now I was looking at the date, it was Feb 2022 when I got the approval. That is when I started. So it's almost taken 3 years. But initially the thought process was, we'll just write it and publish it. But when I started, doing this job, then some people said it will be good to get a good publisher.
Right.
And then we approached Penguin. Then, we were advised that, look, this format is not going to work. Because now podcasts have become such a big thing, right? So nobody reads Q&As. They can have a conversation directly with you. So why read your Q&As? So then we changed the format a little bit, and then I went ahead and closed it. So it's been a long journey, but it almost felt that I'm at the finish line now,
Right.
which is why I kept going.
You are being consistent for 3 years, and I think that is the only thing that matters. This brings me to the last question. So you look at emerging markets, and if we talk about India, what are certain trends about India that you are excited about and you feel ki those are the trends that will at least help us achieve that 5 trillion economic goal that we have?
See, right now, the entire macroeconomic situation is so uncertain. It's very global, not India. And India, in my view, is the biggest shining spot within that global macroeconomic thing, right? So if you look at from a flows perspective, there are so much flows that used to go into China. China is like a big economy.
Right.
Even trickles that don't go there can cause huge waves in markets like India or Southeast Asia and all these emerging markets. So from a flow perspective, there is significant amount of flow that the money that was seeking China earlier is not seeking China anymore, and that will need to find other big markets.
Right.
So India in that sense is very well positioned. India is also one of the largest growing economies, right? And one of the fundamental shifts that has happened in India over the last few years, in my view, is our reliance on foreign money has gone down, right? So I think thanks to the government as well, it has structurally moved capital away from real estate, away from gold, and that is all now finding its way into financial markets. In the long run, I don't know whether this is good, bad, whatever, but it has generally helped companies raise more capital.
Right.
We are not dependent on foreign capital, which is why our markets have sustained so well, right? In spite of whatever turbulence happens globally, we see only blips in Indian market. It just keeps coming back. And largely, it's the power of the retail investor in India that has kept this going.
Right.
So if you kind of add all these things up, now, to some extent, our future is in our own hands, right? There are some threats emerging, right? With AI, we don't know how things will shape up, whether it will reduce the revenue of our tech services business, which then impacts our foreign revenue, in turn, then our currency or whatever. Because significant amount of capital flows that you lose out. So all these things are a little uncertain. But I would say I look across emerging markets, right? Because we have portfolio across LATAM, Africa, Asia. I don't think there is any spot that is brighter than India overall. From a macroeconomic perspective, from a structural perspective, from a growth perspective. Because I remember when I was in India, because a large part of the work that I'd done in India only, and we used to take a lot of the things for granted. 6% growth, 7% growth, 8% growth, we used to take it for granted. Because we are an emerging economy, growth to aana hi hai.
इतनी तो होनी चाहिए.
But it is not that like that. Then I realized that when I looked outside India, I looked at Africa as well in some countries, and without naming those countries, they're also at a level which is below India.
Right.
But I think that growth is not happening. And I would question as to why we were taking that for granted when we were in India.
Right.
Right? So obviously there's a lot of good happening, which is kind of driving this growth. And I think overall, over the next 5 years at least, the outlook for India, for me personally, is the brightest. I mean, our best investments in the fund are in India, and I expect it to be that way for the next few years.
Thank you so much, Mahesh. I think that's a great spot to end the podcast. It's great having you here. And folks, I'll also put the link to the book that Mahesh has written in the description. You can go and purchase it directly on Amazon. Thank you so much for taking
Thank you so much for Shashank for having me here.